Wife got her karma for cheating on me. She had a stroke and she's paralyzed and unable to speak.
I don't even know where to begin. I can't describe how I'm feeling right now or how to process any of this. I made this account initially to see if anyone else has gone through something remotely similar to this. And unfortunately, it's not that uncommon. I apologize in advance for the length of this post. I just needed to get this all out cause I thought I'd go insane. I met my wife, we'll call her Sue, in college. We were both 18 at the time. We hit it off as soon as we went on our first date and were spewing I love yous within weeks of us dating. She kinda pursued me, but I was glad as hell that she did. We shared our deepest insecurities and secrets with each other. And when her dad passed away in her senior year of college, I was there for her through the whole ordeal. Her father had pancreatic cancer. And when he was hospitalized, I'd spend nights at the hospital with her so she wouldn't be alone. We got through it. And that point in time strengthened our bond. She told me she didn't know what she would have done if I hadn't been there for her. She called me her soulmate. I knew I was going to marry this girl. And sure enough, I popped the question about 2 years after we graduated. At that point in time, life couldn't get any better for me. I married the girl of my dreams. Had a well-paying job immediately after graduating. And both our families loved us. My best friend, we'll call him Dave, and I had what I could only describe as an unbreakable brotherly bond. Or so I thought. We had known each other since 3rd grade. And he was the brother I never had. He was also married. And moved away with his wife because she had landed a lucrative job at a big law firm. About a year ago, his wife died in a car crash. And this broke him. He moved back to our hometown after. But he was never the same. I tried to be there for him. But he wouldn't engage with anyone. No one understood the pain he was going through. So I asked my wife if she could talk to him. Seeing as she had also lost a loved one and that maybe Dave could relate better with someone who went through something similar. Yes. I know now that this was a huge mistake. We'd pay him visits daily. She would spend hours on end at his place even without me there. They were going on hikes together. Watching movies and not inviting me. Grabbing lunch. All things couples do. Now obviously this was far more interaction than I had intended for them to have, and it did make me uncomfortable. But Dave was doing much better from it. It's important to say that Dave and Sue never liked each other before all this happened. This is because Sue always thought he was a douche. Before he married his wife, Dave was bouncing from relationship to relationship. And even after he got with his deceased wife, he constantly cheated on her. As a result, Sue had a particular dislike for him and always questioned how I could be friends with someone with such low morals. This disdain for Dave is also what made me oblivious to what was to come. As I mentioned, Sue and Dave became inseparable. To the point where she would invite him to things I had planned for us as a couple. Moreover, she started portraying characteristics of what I now know to be classic cheater behavior. Always on her phone. Becoming increasingly distant. Little to no intimacy. And coming home very late. At this point it was all too suspicious, and one day she was texting and I asked who she was talking to. She said it was one of her girlfriends, and when I asked to see what they were saying she became very irritated and called me possessive. When I talked to Dave about how uncomfortable their friendship was making me, he assured me nothing was up and even accused me of not trusting him and my own wife. I was getting gaslit. This continued until one day Sue went out again. She said she was going to her sister's for the weekend because she needed some space from me because I was driving her crazy with my accusations. I was still very suspicious and called her sister to confirm if she was indeed expecting Sue to visit. She confirmed that she was, but that Sue had not yet arrived. Mind you, she had left around 3 p.m. and her sister's place is about 4 hours away from where we live. It was now 10 p.m. Something in the back of my head told me to go to my friend's house, so I did. Sure enough, my wife's car is parked a couple of feet away from my friend's house. At this point it was clear as day as to what was going on. And I hate to admit it, but I cried. Hard. After a few minutes I decided to go in and see if this is really what was happening. I went in through the back door, which I knew would be open. I quietly made my way in and I could hear my wife moaning. I was shaking. When I made it to the door of his bedroom I could see through the creak. My wife, bent over on his nightstand. I'll never get that image out of my head. I'm literally crying as I'm writing this down. I pushed the door wide open and they both froze, staring at me. It took every ounce of my being not to beat the living hell out of Dave. I just walked away and got into my car. I could hear them scrambling and my wife started screaming at me to stop and that she can explain. I didn't want to look at her. I don't know what I would have done, so I just drove away. I cried the entire drive home and they were both spamming me with calls. I went to one of my college friends and have been here the past week or so. I can't eat. I can't sleep. And I can't think of anything else. I informed my work of what was going on and they were kind enough to give me time off. I've been getting phone calls from both Dave and Sue, as well as both our families. I let my family know I was alright and would be back soon. But I haven't responded to anyone else ever since. This hurts. So bad. I'm trying to be strong but my resolve is wavering. How can someone you loved so selflessly do this? I don't know what to do. How do I deal with this? Please help me. TLDR. My wife cheated on me with my best friend and I don't know what to do. Help me. I edited this post and removed the self-ending thoughts I had. I read most of your comments but couldn't respond. I wanted to thank each and every one of you who offered support to me through this difficult time. From the bottom of my heart. Thank you. You have no idea how much your words helped me think in a more positive light since all of this happened. You all gave me hope that there are genuinely kind and caring people in the world. To everyone who sent me a PM. Thank you. I'm going to be responding to as many of you as possible. There were many of you. 50 PMs. Thank you so much for the support. Also, I took your advice and I'm currently looking at getting a divorce lawyer to weigh out my options. My friend recommended one who he described as a shark lol. I'll update you all on how things go. Again, thank you all. Story 2. My 27M wife 27F cheated on me a little over a year ago. I tried to make it work. Is it time to stop? Hello, everyone. This is my first post in this sub. I'm at my wit's end and feel like I can no longer continue to expect to live successfully while being made to feel like I have something wrong with me. Settle in. This is probably going to be wordy. Any advice or guidance would be tremendously appreciated. Thank you. I met Jay, which is what we'll call my wife, 2 years ago in Texas. I was on a business trip for about 5 days in a town 3-5 hours away. We met for drinks. And before the night was through, I knew she was the one. The look in her eye. And later her words confirmed she felt the same. We dated for a short time. 4 months. Before we eloped. We tried to be as pragmatic as possible. Knowing that a short vetting period, if you will, traditionally doesn't end well. We moved from Texas to the West Coast about 2 months after we married as I was assigned a new job. She left hers and we were both confident she would find gainful and worthwhile employment in our new hometown. We got a small home and began making it our own. The new job I started didn't start well. It was vastly different than I had anticipated and I struggled. I didn't feel very inclined to form new relationships with my new coworkers or neighbors. My wife was all I needed. We are each other's best friends. But, in that time, we became each other's only friends. With my job not going well, I became somewhat withdrawn. I would come home from work, hang out with Jay for a bit, passively watch TV, read a book, or play a video game. She'd make dinner. I would sometimes help or just hang out in the kitchen with her. More often, I was doing my own thing elsewhere in the house. We seemed to be going along fine. All things considered. Before we married, I gave up smoking cigarettes. During this time, I picked the habit back up and tried to hide it from her. She's the smartest woman I know. So that didn't last very long. This is, generally, the day-to-day for a while. A little about us. My wife has long suffered from depression. It's truly crippling sometimes and she made mention of suicide attempts before I met her. She and I are both very introverted and anti-confrontational. I, too, have been diagnosed as depressed. But it's much more nuanced to me than it is to her. Regardless, I always endeavored to be understanding and supportive of her depression and spirit. Fast forward about 6 months. I generally would wake up before her. And this particular Saturday morning wasn't different. I woke up and did some menial things in the morning before settling down on the couch to watch something. My wife woke up a short time later and came to sit next to me on the couch. I noticed a large, dried blood stain on the thigh area of her sweatpants and inquired. She took off her pants and revealed several deep, self-inflicted wounds. She'd been cutting herself. She did this the night before, while I was awake, in the other room. I thought she was in the shower longer than normal, but chalked it up to just wanting to chill. She said that she felt abandoned by me. That since I started the new job, I was stressed, withdrawn, and she was extremely unhappy. She held a resolute conviction that I was aware I was doing this, and that it was malicious. I should point out now that our sex life has never been bad. We had sex at least once a day. It slowed down during this period a little bit, But it's never been lacking, and neither one of us have ever expressed any non-satisfaction in that department. To be honest, I admitted to being that way, withdrawn. Not as present as I should have been. I contended that it's been really rough to find solid ground newly married. New job. New area. But I acknowledged that wasn't an excuse. The wounds on her leg were all the wake-up call I needed. And I cursed myself for not being more aware or noticing sooner. It was around this time that I started to notice abnormalities with her and her conduct with her cell phone. I am a huge proponent of privacy and trust, so I never even considered going through her phone or correspondence. Only after several strange late-night texts and awkward shielding of the phone screen sometimes, over the course of the next 2 months, did I finally inquire about who it was. She said it was her old best friend. A female. The contact name on the messages confirmed as much. It was a girl's name that I recognized from stories and her social media. Fast forward another 3 months. It's now been 4 months since the revelation of her unhappiness and self-harm. In this time, we sought couples counseling as well as our own personal site counseling. I can't forget the day, because my favorite sportsball team had won my favorite sportsball championship. I was elated. This night, for whatever reason, I was acutely aware of her secretive texting. So, when an opportunity presented itself, I finally had a look. What I found shook me. There were messages to her female friend, from casual minutiae to sexting, to her telling this girl that she was her soulmate. Only I could tell from the context of the messages that it was extremely unlikely this person she was texting was a girl. So, visibly shaking, I asked her to tell me the truth. The person she was talking to was an old ex-boyfriend from high school, and someone she'd not seen in person for 7 years. I've lost a lot of the detail from that particular night because it just turned my whole world upside down. The following month, she was planning on going home to help care for her mother for a couple days following a minor surgery. She said that she might meet up with him, just to touch base and catch up. Given what I had seen, I implored her and begged her not to see him. She would not relent. The week she was to go home came. And that was the plan. We saw one of our favorite musical acts in a city we really wanted to travel to, and then she boarded a flight to go see her mom. That week, while she was away, I felt the most debilitating, frustrating, and confusing insecurity I have ever experienced. Also, that week, I found out that I would lose my job. She was to meet with him the day before she flew home to me. A Wednesday. That day, I heard alarmingly little from her. I had heard from her less than I would like to have, given the sensitivity of the issue with this ex, and the recent news about my job. That night, I had a bottle of wine. I'm not a drinker. Really. I seldom do. But, one bottle turned into almost 3. And before I knew it, my brain had spiraled off course. I couldn't control my impulses and felt a fear, anxiety, and insecurity I could never have imagined possible. It's like I knew something awful was going to happen, and my decision-making went haywire. It was about 11 p.m. and I hadn't heard from her. At this point I was in a full-speed nosedive. I thought that everything I knew in my life was wrong. I wanted to kill myself. I tried to call her and tell her that I was in danger, that I had already cut myself, and that I felt like I was in trouble. But she reacted furiously. She wouldn't accept my calls after that. Shortly thereafter, 2 uniformed policemen showed up at my front door to take me to the hospital. I checked myself out that morning, and learned that she wouldn't be flying back that day, according to plan. She finally did come home 4 days later, and we begun talking. In these talks, I asked what she and the ex did. They just hung out and went to the zoo. Totally platonic. After poking some holes in the minutiae of her stories, I learned that they held hands and kissed. After a little more prodding, I learned that she had him call the police to have her suicidal husband escorted to the hospital, and then proceeded to have sex with her ex while that situation was unfolding on my end. I can't explain how betrayed I felt. She said she wanted a divorce and wanted out. I was in shock. I mean, I'll admit, I didn't take any of this particularly well. I tried to bargain, at the expense of my self-respect. I told her she can continue talking to him. Even suggested we pursue an open relationship if that's what she wanted. I also begged her to stay. Because, at this time, she was the only friend I had in this part of the country. I still believed in what I felt with her, and I was determined to not let our marriage fail. We had some form of this tentative arrangement for the next several months. It was hard. We had an amicable relationship and still had fantastic sex. But it was trying. She stayed. But the presence of this guy, that situation, And my insecurity over it eventually led us to determine that the situation was untenable. I would be ending this job after the new year. And she had applied and gotten a position in a different city. We were going to try separation. One final step before we threw in the towel. As a kind of last hurrah, we decided to take a trip to a foreign city for New Year's Eve. To be completely honest, it was a great trip. It was romantic, exciting, and really endearing. We went out for a fancy meal one night while we were there. We both dressed to the nines. I found shortly after that while she was getting ready that night, on the last trip we'd take together, she was texting nude photos to this ex. Sharing nude pictures is something we had discussed and something she agreed she wouldn't do. Here I was trying to cherish these last moments with a woman I knew I would miss for the rest of my life. And that's what she was doing. She's since moved to that new city. That ex-boyfriend of hers knocked up some other chick back in their hometown and cut my wife off saying he needed to be there for his other girlfriend. I've moved too. I couldn't stay in that house. It made me want to die. I took a new job in a city that allows for easy plane travel to her. And a not too horrible road trip if plane tickets are exorbitantly priced. She vehemently rejected my pleas to live within the same metropolitan area. We have been in our new locations for 10 months and have seen each other a pretty reliable once a month in that time. Our relationship, objectively, is far better than it was a year ago. But I don't know if trying to make it work is the right answer anymore. When we see each other, we have a fantastic time. We are so compatible in so many ways. I'm always reminded of why we chose each other. I still provide for her in a number of ways financially. When we are apart, though, she tries to have as little to do with me as possible. She's alarmingly distant at times, and rudely blows me off others. We are still legally married and have filed no paperwork to begin separation or divorce. I saw her 3 weeks ago and we have plans for nigh, but may get together in between now and then. When I try to make respectful and well-thought appeals to her regarding issues I have, namely the two listed above, she admonishes me for being insecure and untrusting. Yeah, that probably happens. What I experienced because of her, though, was entirely traumatic. I mean, make you question your existence and sanity traumatic. I actively have worked and am continuing to work on trusting her. But she continues to do things that raise red flags or make me doubt my efforts to trust her. This week, she is home with her mother again. She has assured me that she hasn't spoken with this ex since he cut her off, but part of me suspects that she might have said that just to draw my ire away. I have barely heard from her this week. And nothing with a timestamp after 6 p.m. I tried to call her last night and got a "this number is temporarily unavailable" automated message. When I tried to call the next day, there were no issues. Throughout all of this, I have lost my bearings. I am holding on to this relationship and her because I feel it is so profound and she is so special, that I can't justify throwing it all away. I have had serious relationships. I have felt real heartache. But, to this point, I cannot morally justify declaring this over. No matter how much pain it causes me or how much it stunts my personal growth. Everything in my life has changed. Seemingly so dramatically since we eloped. I don't know what's up or down in most things. I'm more depressed and less confident than ever. She is the only constant I've had throughout this turmoil. And I'm beginning to wonder if that's part of the problem. We don't have any children. And our shared bills are easily taken care of. I'm looking for advice on whether or not it's time to cut our losses and give up. I'm just afraid I'll face a lifetime of regret. Thanks in advance. If you've made it this far. TLDR. My wife cheated on me. Wants to have her cake and eat it too. Edit. I am divorcing her. I don't know what to feel. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you would like to see more, feel free to subscribe.